The hum of the Philippine fisheries aircraft filled the cockpit as it approached Scarborough Shoal on a routine patrol. Below, the turquoise waters stretched endlessly, concealing both abundant marine life and geopolitical tensions simmering just beneath the surface. The pilot, scanning the horizon, suddenly caught sight of an approaching silhouette. Fast, menacing, unmistakably military. Within moments, a Chinese Z-20 helicopter closed in aggressively, slicing through the sky at an alarming speed. The radio crackled with a warning in Mandarin, then an urgent transmission from the Philippine Coast Guard. Unidentified aircraft, you are conducting dangerous maneuvers in Philippine airspace. But the Chinese aircraft didn't back down. Instead, it banked sharply, cutting dangerously close, forcing the Philippine plane into evasive action. The tense standoff lasted minutes but felt like hours, an airborne chess game played over disputed waters. This was February 2025, and the Scarborough Shoal had once again become a battleground.
菲律宾飞机，我是中国海军五两舰，你已侵犯中国领空，立即离开，立即离开。
For decades, the South China Sea has been a theater of high-stakes geopolitical rivalry, where competing territorial claims pit China against the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and other regional players. At the heart of this struggle lies not just national pride, but critical resources. Fishing grounds that sustain millions, untapped energy reserves, and control over vital global shipping lanes. Among the contested areas, few are as strategically charged as Scarborough Shoal, a triangle-shaped atoll about 120 nautical miles from the Philippines coast. The shoal has long been a rich fishing ground and a vital maritime outpost. Historically part of the Philippines' Exclusive Economic Zone, EEZ, it fell under China's control after a tense 2012 standoff, despite a 2016 ruling by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague rejecting Beijing's sweeping maritime claims. Yet, rulings mean little in the face of military might, and Scarborough remains a flashpoint, one that erupted once more in February 2025. What began as a routine fisheries surveillance mission quickly turned into a dangerous encounter. The Philippine fisheries aircraft, tasked with monitoring illegal incursions into its exclusive economic zone, found itself aggressively intercepted by a Chinese military helicopter. The Philippine Coast Guard wasted no time accusing China of reckless maneuvers that endangered the crew and violated international airspace protocols.
The helicopter should have observe the proper and safe distance. Dahil alam naman natin how dangerous it will be. Konting banggaan lang, no? With that close proximity can lead to disaster.
China, however, had a different narrative. Beijing denounced the Philippine aircraft's presence as an illegal intrusion into what it claimed was Chinese airspace.
Philippine military aircraft November 22. You are endangering the security of the Chinese Reef. Leave immediately and keep far off, so as to avoid any misunderstanding.
The diplomatic fallout was immediate. Manila lodged a formal protest, while Beijing doubled down on its territorial assertions, warning against any further provocations. The incident underscored a dangerous reality: China's expanding maritime assertiveness, the Philippines' growing defiance, and the increasing risk of an unintended military escalation. This was more than just a close encounter. It was a symptom of a much larger conflict. The Scarborough Shoal standoff in February 2025 signified a turning point in the South China Sea dispute. It reflected China's expanding maritime claims, the Philippines' increasing pushback, and broader concerns about regional security. More critically, it raised questions about shifting U.S. foreign policy. Would Washington intervene more forcefully in defense of its treaty ally, or would it recalibrate its commitments? As dangerous maneuvers at sea and in the air become more frequent, one thing is clear: The South China Sea remains a tinderbox where the next flashpoint could ignite a conflict with global consequences. China's claim over the South China Sea is drawn with a series of dashes on a map, the 9-dash line, an ambiguous boundary stretching thousands of miles from the Chinese mainland, swallowing the exclusive economic zones, EEZs, of the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and others. Beijing insists that these waters are part of its historical territory, despite the fact that they lie hundreds of nautical miles from its shores. But in 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague delivered a landmark ruling. China's claims have been deemed inconsistent with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. The ruling should have settled the dispute. It didn't. Instead, China doubled down, building artificial islands, militarizing reefs, and expanding its maritime presence with an armada of Coast Guard ships and militia vessels. Scarborough Shoal became one of the most contested sites in this struggle. Named after a British merchant ship that ran aground there in the 18th century, Scarborough Shoal is more than just a collection of rocks in the sea. It is a lifeline for Filipino fishermen, a potential military outpost, and a symbol of sovereignty. For centuries, Filipino fishers freely accessed its abundant waters. But in 2012, a standoff between Philippine and Chinese vessels ended with China seizing control of the shoal. Filipino fishermen, once the masters of these waters, now faced harassment and blockade. What was once a traditional fishing ground had turned into a maritime battleground. The Philippines has not remained silent. With its security tied to the United States and a renewed focus on maritime defense, Manila has challenged China's assertiveness at Scarborough Shoal and Second Thomas Shoal, another flashpoint where Philippine forces maintain a rusting, beached warship as an outpost. But China has responded with increasing aggression. In recent years, Philippine resupply missions have been intercepted by Chinese vessels. Chinese Coast Guard ships have used water cannons and blocked access to key areas. Surveillance drones and military aircraft have shadowed Philippine patrols. The February 2025 confrontation between a Philippine fisheries aircraft and a Chinese military helicopter was just the latest escalation. For Captain Mendoza and countless others, the message is clear. This is more than a territorial dispute. It is a fight for survival, for sovereignty, and for the right to cast a net in their own waters without fear. But in the South China Sea, history has shown that small confrontations can quickly turn into full-scale crises. A high-stakes aerial encounter near Scarborough Shoal in February 2025 has intensified tensions between the Philippines and China. According to the Philippine Coast Guard, a Chinese military helicopter flew within 3 meters of a Philippine fisheries aircraft, a move condemned as reckless and a serious threat to safety. Philippine officials decried the incident as yet another example of China's aggressive tactics in the South China Sea.
As far as our action is concerned, what we did is legitimate and routine maritime domain awareness flight. It is not illegal, and if you're going to ask me who is the one carrying out such aggressive and illegal actions, that will only be the People's Republic of China.
China, however, offered a starkly different version of events. Its Southern Theater Command accused the Philippine aircraft of illegally intruding into Chinese airspace, justifying the helicopter's actions as defensive measures to protect sovereignty. The dueling narratives reflect a deepening battle over territorial claims, one that extends beyond physical confrontations into a fierce information war. The media framing of the incident further exposes the growing divide. The Philippines describes China's actions as provocative and dangerous, while Beijing insists it was merely defending its territory. This rhetorical war, where terms like reckless action clash with illegal intrusion, has fueled further diplomatic tensions. Philippine Foreign Secretary Enrique Manalo expressed deep concern over the incident, denouncing China's actions as reckless and unprofessional. The event adds to an escalating pattern of confrontations in disputed waters, underscoring the fragility of peace in one of the world's most contested regions. The near collision between a Philippine fisheries aircraft and a Chinese military helicopter was not an isolated event. It was the latest in a pattern of Chinese assertiveness in the South China Sea, one that has seen Beijing deploy Coast Guard and military assets to challenge, intercept, and intimidate regional claimants. Over the past year alone, Chinese forces have blocked resupply missions to Philippine outposts, harassed Vietnamese fishing boats, and even shadowed US and Australian naval patrols, with China's newest Coast Guard law allowing its forces to fire on trespassing vessels. The risk of a military clash is higher than ever. The February 2025 confrontation highlighted the fragile nature of the South China Sea dispute. A split-second miscalculation, whether in the air or at sea, could ignite a broader conflict. The region has already seen dangerous close calls. In December 2024, a Chinese fighter jet nearly collided with a U.S. reconnaissance aircraft over the Spratlys. In early 2025, Chinese ships used water cannons against a Vietnamese Coast Guard vessel near the Parasols. Just weeks before the Scarborough Shoal incident, a Malaysian patrol aircraft was intercepted by Chinese jets near Luconia Shoals. Each of these incidents increases the probability of an accidental clash spiraling out of control, dragging multiple nations into an unpredictable conflict. For the Philippines, the stakes are existential. With its aging navy and limited air force, Manila relies heavily on its 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty with the United States. The questions remain about how far the U.S. is willing to go. China has been steadily testing Washington's resolve, calculating whether the U.S. would risk direct conflict over contested reefs and shoals. China is constantly pushing the envelope to test both Manila's resolve and America's treaty commitments. In April 2025, the Philippines will host a regional security conference, bringing together key Indo-Pacific nations to strengthen collective deterrence against Chinese maritime expansion. We've been doing multi-alignment, and we will even enhance our cooperation further. Enrique Manalo, Philippine Foreign Secretary. For Beijing, the Scarborough Shoal incident was part of a broader playbook, gradually expanding control over disputed areas while avoiding outright war. The 9-dash line remains the foundation of China's South China Sea claims, despite the 2016 Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling rejecting them. By incrementally increasing its presence and pressuring weaker claimants, China aims to normalize its dominance, making its control an accepted reality. With tensions running high and U.S. credibility on the line, the February 2025 incident is a warning. The South China Sea remains a geopolitical flashpoint where a single reckless maneuver could change the course of history. From the moment the Philippine Fisheries aircraft reported a dangerous interception, Manila took control of the story. The Philippine Coast Guard issued a strongly worded statement calling the Chinese maneuver reckless and unprofessional. This framing dominated international media, portraying China as an aggressor willing to endanger lives to assert its territorial claims. Beijing responded with a counter-narrative. China's Southern Theater Command called the flight an illegal intrusion into Chinese airspace, justifying the helicopter's actions as a necessary defensive measure. Chinese state-run media, including Global Times and CCTV, flooded social platforms with articles accusing the Philippines of provoking the incident to gain international sympathy. This media battle was not just about one event. It was part of a broader war of words, shaping global opinion on the South China Sea dispute. The chaotic nature of military encounters, especially in disputed zones, makes objective verification difficult. Satellite images and radar data, often relied on for neutral assessments, can be interpreted differently by opposing sides. In this case, Philippine sources claimed radar tracking confirmed the Chinese helicopter's dangerous proximity, within 3 meters. Chinese reports argued that the aircraft had violated a no-fly zone and that the helicopter's movements were defensive, not aggressive. Independent analysts noted a lack of publicly available imagery from either side, making it difficult to confirm the exact sequence of events. This lack of clear evidence allowed both sides to push their own versions of reality, further fueling tensions. The February 2025 Scarborough Shoal incident was not an isolated event. It was a flashpoint in a broader struggle for dominance in the South China Sea. The confrontation between a Philippine fisheries aircraft and a Chinese military helicopter exemplifies the increasingly dangerous encounters between regional forces, where split-second decisions could have far-reaching consequences. At the heart of this crisis are competing national interests, historical grievances, and a contest for maritime control that is growing more volatile with each passing year. If the Scarborough Shoal standoff is any indication, future incidents are inevitable. However, the frequency and intensity of such confrontations must be managed through diplomacy, not brinkmanship. Key factors that could shape the future of the dispute include ASEAN's role. The regional bloc must take stronger steps toward finalizing a code of conduct to prevent unchecked maritime aggression. International law enforcement. The 2016 Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling rejected China's 9-line claims, yet enforcement remains weak. Global players must push for stronger adherence to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea to maintain order in disputed waters. Confidence-building measures. Bilateral and multilateral dialogues between the Philippines, China, and other stakeholders are critical to avoiding direct military escalation. The Scarborough Shoal incident is a stark reminder of the volatility in the South China Sea. Tensions will not dissipate overnight, but conflict is not inevitable. Through strategic diplomacy, international law enforcement, and mutual engagement, regional players can avoid military escalation and prevent a localized confrontation from spiraling into a larger crisis. The world is watching. Whether the South China Sea remains a region of rising tensions or a model of peaceful dispute, resolution will depend on the choices made in the coming months and years. Thank you for tuning into our channel. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis of global issues.